Hey guys, it's Dave. Today I'm inviting you along to explore some of my green Hoya plants that are cheap, grow terrifically well, they're beautiful, they require so little from us and give us so much. We tend to overlook them, I think, and I want to rectify at least a little bit of that right now. Let's start with the Hoya crassipedialata. And that is this guy right here. Actually, hold the phone. Let's start off with a few of my Hoya crassipedialata. Let me set this down. Thank you for modeling. There you are. So, I bought a plant about twice the size of this guy right here a couple of years ago. Steve's Leaves was having a 2-for-1 sale, so I took advantage of that. And those come in a 3.5 inch pot. And it started growing very quickly. This is the original plant. And let's just take a moment to look at those absolutely beautiful leaves. This is not the splash version that everybody is so excited about right now. This is just plain old crassipedialata. I had an epic struggle to the death with the English language in the last video, so I hope I do better today. We'll see. This is a plant from Vietnam that prefers, or at least can endure, cooler temperatures, and I can attest to that. This plant has never been in my Mars Hydro tent. It is grown in a room that I keep at about 56, 57 degrees at night during the winter. And while growth did slow down compared to the ones in the tent, it certainly never stopped. I have cut this plant back numerous times. What I've done here with this bamboo hoop that you see is put a piece of twine through the middle of it. So there's a cross piece I tied, and then I tied this one to it. So it'll help it make it a little bit fuller plant without having to put 2 bamboo hoops, because this is going to be a permanent part of my collection. Some of the other plants here that are her babies, these grew up in the tent over the winter from propagations. So you can see that we're talking about a very, very fast growing plant. More of the same, and more, and more. And I had to cut a whole bunch of these vines out of the tent because they had just grown just around everything and they were out of control. And with a plant that grows this quickly, cutting it back didn't bother me at all. These are plants I will be selling in the near future. Some I'll be starting more propagations. But in a plant like this, back to my point, is that if you cut the vines, it'll just start new growth points. So I have never chopped and propped any of these. These were just the propagations I started the pot with. So a plant that prefers, I see it usually listed as medium to bright light, and my experience has been that they far prefer medium light. So easy grower, a very beautiful plant, available just about anywhere. I saw one today on Etsy, shipped for $12.99, and it was a little bit bigger than the propagation that I just showed you. If you buy a plant this large, you'll have a full-size plant in no time at all if you give it just the very basics. I lead off with this, and if you are just starting a Hoya collection, you cannot do better. Next up is one that you may not actually see all that commonly. It is Hoya carnosa, just the plain old green version. And like most carnosa, it does have some speckling on those leaves. An absolutely incredibly beautiful plant and a wonderful grower. This is from a reverted section of Hoya exotica. And not all intervariegated Hoya our Hoya Princess. This is from Ed Helms' Exotic Gardens. It's a very, very good grower too, but it will throw off green vines, and if you, on a variegated plant, let the green kind of take over, it's very dominant and the entire plant could revert, or maybe even will revert. So I took that one vine beginning of winter, maybe during winter, and just kind of propped them up in my prop box, planted them in this 4¼ inch pot once it got going, and look at it now. It's only been a few months, and we're talking about a wonderful looking plant. It's a plant from China. It was the first ever described in 1809, which, you know, I was a boy in short pants in 1809, so those were the days. But another plant that's going to require almost nothing from you except patience if you want it to bloom. 3 to 5 years would not be out of the ordinary. And it needs light. It needs more light than you might think. I have this in a west window, and then above it I have a Soltech Vita light. So it gets a ton of light, and it's obviously doing well. A theme of mine, if you have been around for a few videos, is that I feed my plants, I water my plants, and I feed them, and I give them light, and they grow. It's this magical combination. And I do that year round. I do not stop. I do not slow down. I don't follow the often repeated advice that Hoya are light feeders, feed them half doses once a month. I don't even know where that came from, but I give them Michigan State University feed, whatever they recommend on the package. I think it's 1 teaspoon per gallon, and I do that year round. And that's what you get, a very beautiful carnosa. I don't know who could ask for more from a plant that requires almost zero from you. You may or may not know that a ton of Hoya have been reclassified into verticillata, and so there is an enormous variety. I picked the most common one, probably to most people, which is this one that Trader Joe's was selling, I think last year, for maybe $15 for a pot. I got a cutting from a friend about this time last year, I think, and grew it into this. You will often see black margin in the name of this plant. Black margin is a descriptor. Just like splash is only a descriptor, it's never part of the name, unless it's a seller trying to charge you more money. Then it's common to see those in the name. A wonderful growing plant that didn't do a lot for me initially. And then, like a lot of plants that are just sort of cruising, I put it in the Mars Hydro tent where the bump in humidity was significant and light, and it took off immediately. Just really. So I love this plant. It is beautiful. It makes a great trailing plant, which I really appreciate in a Hoya. It doesn't send out vines trying to grab a hold of everything. It very quickly will leaf out a vine and drag that weight down. So a wonderful variety. This is one that I have grown up from a seedling. Very different looking plant. But I grabbed it just to show a little of the variety of verticillata. Very beautiful. And these were described back in Indonesia in, I think it was 1837? Yes, 1837. So way back. Another example is one that will fall over as per usual. I will drop one on the floor before we're done here. I think you all know that by now. Stay. This is a reclassified one. This is the Acuta 997. So another wonderful verticillata. And this was, until maybe this winter, just a tiny little plant. So this is also a seed-grown plant. So there can be some natural variety among plants like that. Then we have Hoya incrusata from the Philippines, described all the way back in 1904. A wonderful no-fuss plant, absolutely bulletproof, and a great grower. Had there not been a slight mishap on my end, this would be a much larger plant. We just won't get into what happened to the other half of this plant. Mistakes were made. But this is a really neat looking leaf. They kind of curve in or cup in, and I would imagine that as this is hanging on a tree, it would really keep the water from pooling on the leaf and then force it back down into the roots further down the plant. This is a really great grower. It takes 18 months to 2 years to get it to flower, and I've not flowered this. It allegedly smells very lemony to the like lemon pledge side of lemony, which sounds good to me. The leaves vary in size quite a bit and in shape somewhat. And there will also be some that are darker and some that are quite a bit lighter, and that is not even a factor of light. That will just happen under identical conditions. This is an incredibly easy plant to propagate, to fill out. I think it looks best hanging. You could try to put this on a trellis if you wanted to, but I think it looks just marvelous like this. And this is another one of Doug Chamberlain's favorite kind of go-to easy plants. It's so wonderful to have plants in your collection that just don't require much from you. It really offsets the challenging ones, I think. And I can't wait to grow this one up. It requires no special conditions. This grew some of the winter in the tent, and then I ran out of room and I pulled it out of the tent. Didn't skip a beat. So it went from pretty high light in the tent to in front of a wintry west window here in Iowa, which is obviously plenty bright, but nothing special during the winter, especially since there was 1 month where the sun, I don't know if it came out the entire month. But Hoya incrusata, there are a couple of variants of this, the variegated version and the moon shadow, something, that are really hot. They're getting a lot of money for them. Green plants grow great for a reason. These leaves are full of chlorophyll, and it serves this plant well. Wonderful. Definitely highest recommendation on this one. Hoya fungii is one that I featured in the Make Your Own Trellis video, which I will put up here if you want to check that out. This is also one from China that purportedly likes it on the warmer side. It lived all winter in the Mars Hydro tent, and I haven't had an experience of trying to grow this out where it's colder. But it grew very, very well. This is another plant grown from seed. My God, I have a ton of Hoya grown from seed. These leaves can get quite large. This was getting a lot of light, so the leaves don't need to get very large in that environment. Jacqueline's Jungle just featured this as a good kind of one step off the beaten path for a beginner because of its ease of growing and its beauty. Frankly, it's wonderful. She had hers hanging and it looked great. Hers have leaves the size of a small palm, not my big hands, but someone's small palm that aren't mine. This is a plant that has never even given me a yellow leaf yet. So absolutely wonderful. It's a beautiful plant, has a little bit of speckling on those leaves and a crooked pot to rock in. It's already going to outgrow this trellis. I don't know why I didn't put it on a taller one. Oh, because I put it on the trellis when it was a tiny little plant. Them's the breaks. I'll just have to redo it and wait for this thing to bloom. Let me grab the next one. Before I bring in the big daddy who is draining in the sink, I'll show you species India, which I featured in, I think, the first video I ever did, the rare Hoya video. It's an unnamed species. You probably don't have to guess too hard that this was found in India. Really cool green plant. grows very quickly once established, which does not take very long. It was getting completely out of control, so I cut the vines way back, and then I took bare vines, and then I took some propagations not long ago. And this is in a 3-inch container right now. And so it started off with just this little bit of vine and then one additional small plant there. And it's done just great. So the trellised version versus the one that I chopped the absolute hell out of because it was so out of control. Pardon the language, but it really was. These get the lowest light in the tent. And according to what I found on Steve's Leaves, this prefers humidity at 60% or above. I've had him growing, not this one, but I've had this one growing out in normal room conditions, except during the winter when I put it away just for space. And it never missed a beat. It's a very good grower. It's very, very pretty. This is not one you're going to come across. But if you see one for sale, a small one, and it's cheap, I would recommend getting it. But again, I love green leaves. I think they're beautiful. I think when you see jungle scenes, there's a reason that most of the vegetative growth is green. That's what helps a plant grow great and fast. And I'm a fan of all that. One second. And finally, the criminally overlooked Hoya australis, plain old green form, of course, theme of the video. This was described back in 1830, and it's native Australia. And just look at those beautiful leaves. It's an incredible plant. It grows so well. It is currently in a 6-inch container. When I bought this maybe 2 years ago, I bought a very small plant. I grew that up a little bit. I took 4 propagations off of that, or maybe 3, and I made a series of 4 growths, put in a double bamboo stake, and grew them up on that. And this is, let me stop spinning it so much, but this is what we have. A very beautiful full plant. It gets higher light than you might think. It is directly under a Soltech aspect light, which is their most powerful one at 40 watts, and a very focused beam, and it's in a west window. So it has done this plant no harm to have that much light, although I may be moving it as I do some rearranging and put the plant porch together and so forth. There are a number of peduncles on here that I hope will bloom. The flowers are, I think the chef's kiss is done, but oh, so beautiful. We'll see if they actually bloom. There's a lot of performance anxiety around the first time, and frankly, I've heard it just doesn't always happen. So we'll see what happens. I will definitely let you know on the channel. But they are so pretty, and I'm sure you're looking at a picture of one right now. What I do with this plant, as you can see, we've got some long vines. And, you know, for the people newer to Hoya, if I were to force a vine down on any of the species or cultivars or whatever, it would die if it could not point that tip back up, and it would just start a new growth point. So when I determine, you know, when am I going to button it down, I would probably choose something like this, which leaves all of this. I don't know if you can see that, and I sure can't tell on the LCD, but a good 6 or 7 inch of this vine, and then it will immediately start to grow back up. So I let them get quite long so that they can go down all or most of the bamboo trellis, and then I clip them. And not too tight. You don't want to do it too tight. And you don't want to bend this sharply. Just give it a nice wide berth so you don't break it. And if you see sap dripping out of the vine, you will know you broke it. And that would be unfortunate. I paid very little money for this plant, and I know that the Hoya LOVE, the variegated version of this, is very, very popular. I like this one better. It's personal preference, of course, and you know, as I've said maybe in the last video even, you know, your home that's your canvas. Paint your masterpiece. And the plants I do have that are variegated, like my Epiprinum pinnatum, Arium, Kujang's Flame, one of the aeroids I own, wow, does it stand out among the green plants. I mean, it is stunning. And I will be doing a video on that, maybe next, to prove that I do have aeroids. We'll see what happens. But this is hardly an exhaustive collection of green plants, but when I went through the tent and I went through the house, I wanted to pick plants that are stone cold killers in terms of ease of growth, requiring so little from us, as I said. With a little patience can bring you a plant this large and full. And I could have been propagating this all along and made it even fuller, but at some point, just what's it worth to you to spend the time to do it and disrupt the plant's growth and so forth. So I've been really happy with this. Hopefully we get over the first time jitters and we have some flowers to report on really soon. But that's it for today from Iowa City, Iowa. I hope you're having a good one. I hope you have a few minutes for yourself today. Do something special, and I'm going to see you again real soon in the next one. Bye-bye.